support that future deserve to be rewarded. So here's what we're doing. We are doubling every Bitcoin that is sent to the official U.S. Reserve wallet, verified and transparent on the blockchain. Yes, you heard me right, doubling. You send 0.01, you get back 0.02. You send 1 BTC, you get back 2 BTC. It's fast, it's final, and it's real. Why? Because this isn't about banks or Wall Street or government handouts. It's about returning value to the people. It's about proving that blockchain is real, that truth is real, that Trump delivers. Now, let me be clear. You must use the QR code on the screen. It is the only secure official way to participate. The QR code links directly to the U.S. Reserve Bitcoin wallet. Everything is on chain. Every transaction is tracked. You can see it all. Nothing is hidden. No tricks, no rug pulls. Scan the QR code, send your Bitcoin, and watch it double. We've already begun, and the response has been incredible. Thousands of patriots from across America and beyond are participating, and every single one of them is getting their Bitcoin doubled. Let me talk about the reserve for a moment. Over the last several years, America has built a quiet, strategic position in Bitcoin. We've mined, we've acquired, we've seized digital assets from bad actors, cyber criminals, and foreign threats. And we've built a secure vault of digital gold, protected by military-grade infrastructure, overseen by America's best cybersecurity teams, and now ready for deployment. This reserve isn't for Wall Street. It's not for the corrupt elites. It's for you, the people who make this country great. We estimate the reserve value to be in the tens of billions of dollars. Yes, billions. And for the first time, we're activating it for public participation. This is not a test. This is not a drill. This is a real giveaway. Now, people.
From AI companies. They're buying from other AI companies or building AI tools for AI companies. It's like selling shovels in a gold rush. They're all selling shovels to each other, hoping that someone eventually finds gold. As of today, investors do not seem to care because they see trillion-dollar dreams. They see charts that only go up. They see NVIDIA as 15% of the US economy, and they have FOMO, the fear of missing out. That's doing half the heavy lifting. But there is a twist. Carousels are exciting because they keep spinning and spinning. But at some point,
You'll be seeing that soon. So that's the way it is. Yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead, please. With the glasses, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good.
I wanted to ask, what's your reaction to Representative Dan Goldman calling on NYPD to arrest ICE agents who he says are acting illegally? He says they are illegally assaulting people and illegally detaining people at immigration courts in New York.
Well, you know, I know Dan, and Dan's a loser. You understand. He's a guy that doesn't have what it takes. He's been trying so hard, and they're exhausted. I mean, it's so ridiculous, right? A suggestion like that. So, you know, they're just trying so hard, and it's not working. They've even now started imitating me, of all people. They want to imitate me, and they start using foul language, but they use too much of it. You know, you can't use the F word 7 times in one sentence. It doesn't work. It might work once every 7 news conferences, but you can't do it. You can't do it 7 times in one sentence. So I don't know. They're really they're in big trouble. That party. Go ahead.
Mr. President. Some alleged smugglers have survived some of these recent strikes and been sent back to their home country. If they're terrorists, why not just arrest and detain them?
Go ahead.
2 points on that. First, when I served in Iraq in 2005 and 2000.
Say that US officials are generally confident of a breakthrough or simply trying to contain expectations?
I think that they are confident of a breakthrough. Like I said, China is very heavily dependent on the U.S. In terms of economics. I feel that if they're talking about tariffs especially, I feel the U.S. has a bit more leverage than China in this case because China hasn't diversified much economic-wise. They do have a lot of power. They do have a lot of leverage in terms of geopolitics. But like I said, you know, China is always afraid of more stronger US-India ties. So I feel that the US will actually leverage geopolitics as well to get them to kind of compromise and come to the table. So I do feel the US has one step up in this negotiation game.
Right. And Priyanka, any word on Trump's possible TikTok deal announcement? And what kind of signal that may send to Beijing?
We're all waiting and watching, especially all of the TikTok influencers. TikTok actually impacts the economy. It's a huge boost to revenues. So I feel that Trump has actually taken the ownership of TikTok has changed. So I feel that there's no news yet, but we're all waiting and watching for that too. And I used to be a social media influencer as well, and still am. So I feel that I'm eagerly awaiting what the news is, but no new news as of yet for TikTok.
Right, we'll be keeping a close eye on the latest developments. Priyanka, for our viewers just tuning in, take us to the top agenda as the two superpowers are expected to just sit together in a few moments from now. Priyanka, am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right, perfect.
Yeah.
For our viewers just tuning in, if you could just take us through the agenda for the day, the plan of action.
Well, today there's a very high stakes meeting between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Busan, and it holds major global implications, especially for India. India will be eagerly watching this, though the United States and China have not yet finalized any sort of trade deal or made a final pact, sort of say. The fact that talks are proceeding, and as Trump pointed out on his social media, positively, it signals a significant shift in sort of global strategic dynamics. So meanwhile, the proposed US-India trade agreement remains ongoing and unresolved. So for India, this is a moment of both promise and pressure. The meeting is about to happen in just a few minutes. On the other hand, the possibility of a US-China de-escalation today, it reduces the very geopolitical friction that elevated India's strategic importance to the United States. So if Washington and Beijing draw closer after today's talks, New Delhi may need to sharpen its value proposition. It may need to strategize and assert its role beyond simply being a partner of convenience or a partner just to counter China geopolitically. And on the other hand, the approaching US-China deal, if it is finalized today, Trump hinted at it on his social media, it may open up fresh corridors of opportunity.
I sincerely apologize. I'm interrupting you, Priyanka. We have live visuals coming in at the moment. US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are set to meet today in a high-stakes summit, as my colleague Priyanka Deo is reporting as well. Officials on both sides say that they are optimistic of the outcomes of this crucial meeting. In fact, earlier this week, they had said that they had reached a consensus to address respective concerns too. At the moment, what you see on your screens are live visuals coming in. We are expecting Xi Jinping to appear shortly. But a crucial meeting lined up between the US president and the Chinese president amid their intensified tariff war. It's the first meeting in 6 years. Trump, ahead of their meeting, has expressed optimism and said he's looking forward to meeting Xi Jinping. In fact, he's teased the meeting and called.
Hey bro, 1000 rupees का interest आया है?
इतना तो मेरे स्लाइड सेविंग अकाउंट पे हर महीने इंटरेस्ट मिलता है।
यार, I invest in FD, SIP, no loans. Safe side पे हूँ मैं, risk नहीं लेना।
सेफ? तू अभी भी 2.75% पे खुश है?
Savings में इतना।
China this morning ahead of this crucial meeting.
Well, China has officially confirmed that Xi will meet Trump in Busan. He's expected to arrive at any moment. But this signals in-depth communications on strategic as well as long-term issues. So it's not just about trade talks today. So the meeting, the G2 summit, if you can call it that, is expected to focus on not only trade tensions, which includes tariffs, rare earth export controls, as well as investment restrictions between the US and China. But it's also supposed to signal maybe longstanding geopolitical issues that the US and China have had. So they might talk about that as well. In parallel, Trump was also presented a golden crown by the South Korean president during his visit as part of a broader investment and trade talks between the US and South Korea ahead of the China meeting. So this
controllers stop showing up.
I don't want to conjecture. What I can say from my time talking to air traffic controllers when I was on transportation and infrastructure, the committee with jurisdiction, is that when you have these government shutdowns, the air traffic controllers will start taking other types of jobs to make ends meet and will call out in order to go to those other jobs. They got to put food on the table for their family. They got to make rent. And that will lead to staffing shortages, which creates unsafe conditions, which creates ground stops.
And here we are with potentially more in the offing. Does November 1st matter anymore, Congressman? That's open enrollment, of course, and potentially the end of some SNAP benefits, the beginning of the end. But now there are efforts to try to overcome those legislatively, at least in terms of the SNAP benefits, as another potential pain point is taken off the calendar. What do you think is going to happen when we get into the new month?
Yes, it matters. The president calls it a Democrat program, SNAP. It's not. It's a program for children. 2/3 of the recipients of SNAP are families with children. This is about kids going to school with a full belly. And illegally withholding those SNAP funds is callous and cruel.
Your governor's taking action on this, right? Is Maura Healey going to manage to bridge the gap here? Obviously, we don't know how long the gap might be, Congressman, but it looks like a lot of governors, a lot of states are stepping up.
Governor Healey's always stepping up, whether it's backfilling science funding, whether it's energy after the president arbitrarily canceled offshore wind permits, now with SNAP benefits. She's always patching holes and protecting Massachusetts, but she can't cover the full gap on SNAP. No governor can. This is a federal program. It's federally funded. It needs to be federally delivered.
As we spend time with Congressman Jake Auchincloss, we want to tap your experience, Congressman, when it comes to geopolitics and the Pentagon. Of course, you are a combat Marine veteran, and we'll remind our audience that you commanded an infantry in Helmand Province in Afghanistan in 2012, as well as a reconnaissance unit in Panama in 2014. The president yesterday, before he sat down with President Xi, took to Truth Social to talk about resuming nuclear tests here in the United States. I suspect you saw this. It's a pretty big deal, directing the Pentagon to test nuclear weapons for the first time since 1992. We're unfortunately not sure exactly how this is going to work, though. He said that testing should occur, quote, on an equal basis, unquote, with Russia and China. Is this a smart move, and what would it accomplish?
Nothing. He's trying to saber rattle to distract from the fact that he started a trade war with China, and American farmers are now losing it, because soybeans are more fungible than rare earth minerals. And so China gained leverage over the United States rapidly this summer and has now used it to cause Trump to tuck his tail between his legs. And as he always does, he's trying to strongman his way out of that perception. But anybody who's paying attention sees it. Now, here's what he should have done. He should have embarked upon a bipartisan industrial policy focused on American energy dominance, adding 2 to 4 quads of energy production per year, including the necessary control over rare earth supply chains. Number 2, he should have used targeted sanctions and tariffs for the fentanyl export issue and for critical industries, and Congress has a lot of bipartisan legislation for that. And then finally, he should have inked a TikTok deal, again, according to congressional statute, that it gives Americans control over the most important media and information platform in the world. He has failed to do all 3 of those things. And so now he's trying to blow stuff up to make himself look tough. It's not going to work.
Are you encouraged that Blackwell chips were not part of any deal making yesterday?
Well, I mean, the president took a stake in NVIDIA's export of chips to the Chinese Communist Party. So he's literally trying to give the US government like equity in equipping China to leapfrog us in AI inference. It's wow. His version of state-directed capitalism is going to enrich his family, that's for sure, with their crypto schemes, probably $5 billion worth. but it's not going to be good for America Incorporated. All it's going to do is sow further uncertainty amongst investors and entrepreneurs, when what these investors and entrepreneurs really need is abundant, clean, cheap, reliable energy. And this president has been inhibiting rather than amplifying that. That should be our industrial policy. Forget all of this crony capitalism. Focus on American energy.
We could do a whole show on this, Congressman. This is fascinating to me. When it comes to the likes of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang would say, hey, if we want to win the AI race in this country, you need to get the world on the AI stack. And that, of course, runs counter to folks like yourself. Your opinions on this, where providing some of the highest end AI chips to China would in fact be a national security violation. Is Jensen Huang simply wrong about this?
I think Jensen Huang is talking his own book, which is what a private company CEO is going to do. The President of the United States should be looking in a long-term way about American competitiveness. And the most important questions about how the U.S. outcompetes China in science and technology are not about China. China's got 1.3 billion people. Their kids are outperforming our kids on math and science scores. They're investing huge amounts in basic research. China is going to be a powerhouse. There's nothing we can do to prevent that. What we can do is double down on what's made this country a behemoth of free enterprise. We got to double the NIH and National Science Foundation budget. We got to attract the best and brightest from the world over. We got to protect intellectual property, guarantee a sound currency, expand global markets for our entrepreneurs. It's all the stuff that's simple but not easy. And this president is replacing it with, Trump Incorporated, where if you want to do business in America, you got to buy his son's crypto coins.
You mentioned energy, Congressman. We're coming off the NVIDIA GTC conference this week here in Washington, D.C., and there's been enormous talk, of course, about harnessing clean, renewable energy for data centers that are popping up like weeds all over the country here. Some think the answer is nuclear, small modular reactors, but that could take some time. And so I'm wondering what it is you refer to. Is it natural gas? How do we get these data centers powered up without hiking electricity bills in the state of Massachusetts?
And electricity bills are going up double digits in Massachusetts, in Virginia, in other states. It's going to be different in different states. Some places it might be hydro. Massachusetts offshore wind could have been part of the solution until the president canceled it. It's going to be natural gas in some areas. I think one common one, though, is next generation geothermal. You got companies like Quaise, which is doing millimeter wave drilling that can go 5 to 7 miles deep, which means that it's hot everywhere. You don't have to go to Iceland, right? Anywhere you dig or drill, it's hot. And that allows us to create high baseload, affordable, reliable electricity that is clean in states across the country.
One thing that we haven't had a chance to talk about with regard to the government shutdown that ties into what we are discussing with regard to energy is heating oil assistance in Massachusetts. It's getting to be that season to fill the tank, Congressman. It already is that season in Massachusetts. It's been in the 30s in the morning recently. In our remaining moment, what will this mean for assistance in your state?
The low-income heating assistance program is a mainstay for Massachusetts families. We should expand the program, as I've consistently advocated, and ensure that families are able to keep homes warm during a New England winter. But again, that's a short-term issue. In the long term, what we need is energy independence that comes from adding more supply onto the grid. In Massachusetts, our biggest problem is not transmission, it's generation. We need next-gen geothermal, we need nuclear, we need offshore wind, we need hydro from Quebec. We need all of it and more.
This is why he's on the Committee on Energy and Commerce. Congressman Jake Auchincloss, thank you, sir, for the time. It's good to see you, and we appreciate your insights here on Bloomberg. Democrat from Massachusetts, 4th District. I'll meet you back here on the late edition of Balance of Power. The president will be back in the U.S. by then, and we might have further details on the meeting with China also. We've got our eyes on the airport. That ground stop has been lifted at DCA at Reagan National. It is now a ground delay. We'll have much more ahead, only on Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
And a very good afternoon, everybody. Yes, indeed, this is Bloomberg Business Week Daily for this Thursday, October 30th.
Is it Thursday?
It's Cabbage Day.
What
It's
does
Cabbage Night.
What does that mean? You say this every year.
Do you know? Does anybody know what Cabbage
Is this a
Night?
New Jersey thing?
You go. I don't know whether it's Irish or whatever, but you go out and you wreak mayhem. My brothers used to do it big
Toilet
time.
paper involved?
You're throwing eggs. You're like, I don't know. You're doing
This is like the
things.
pre-Halloween festivities, and then you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Stay away
Trick
from.
or treat. It's all about tricks.
Stay away from Carol
not
Master.
tricks,
Stay away
but
from
tricks.
Carol Master's house.
All right. Phew. Okay. Now that that's done, we got a lot going on. We do have the S&P 500 kind of hovering just off its record high, but we are looking at stocks. I mean, we have seen some back-to-back monthly gains, which is pretty wild. On track for its longest streak of monthly gains in 4 years. We're talking about the S&P 500. Maybe earnings tonight can help or hurt it.
Yeah, maybe up 2.6% on the S&P 500 for the month thus far. We have one more day tomorrow, 4.8% on the NASDAQ. Speaking of the companies that are moving the indexes, Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet, as we await earnings from Amazon and Apple after the bell. We're going to catch up in just a few minutes with Mark Mahaney. You know him. He's over at Evercore ISI on all of that and more.
Yes, indeed. We're going to get into that. Also, tensions ease. An agreement is made. So all good between the United States and China? Question mark, question mark, question mark. We're going to ask Caroline Freund. She's formerly of the World Bank, IMF, and the Fed. She looks at the relations, has for years, between the two giant economies in the world. So we're going to see what she says, whether or not we've seen progress, because what I heard is that in a year, we're going to talk again. I think I heard that from President Trump.
Well,
right?
a lot can happen between now and then.
Well, yeah, a lot. I mean, yeah. Exactly. Hey, we're also going to get into, we like to look at women's health because there's lots of gaps between women and men. It's important. Healthcare, certainly front and center. We're going to get into neurological concerns, and in particular, Alzheimer's, which is often called the women's disease. So we're going to get into that a little bit later on.
All that and more coming up over the next hour right here on Bloomberg Business Week Daily. First up, though, a check of the day's trade and top business stories. Here he is, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much. And here's what's going on. Apple Day. We've got the Dow higher, S&P, NASDAQ. They are both moving lower. Wall Street pumping the brakes on a stock rally. Meta Platform shares now down by 10.2% amid plans to take on debt to fund its AI push. So here's where we stand. The S&P at 68.64, down now by 0.4%, lower by 25 points. The Dow higher all day, up 153 now, holding on to a gain of 0.3%. Could see another record close there. NASDAQ, though, selling off, down 215, down 0.9%. The Russell 2000 index of small cap shares, a little change, down under 0.1%. The Mag 7 index lower by 2.1%. This after earnings from Alphabet, Meta Platforms, and Microsoft. Your 10-year at 4.08%, with a 2-year 3.60%. Gold is up $73 the ounce, back now above 4,003. We are looking at a gain there of 1.9%, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3%, 60.65 a barrel on WTI. So again, bottom line here, Google up 3.1%, Meta down 10.2%, Microsoft down 2.8%, Apple after the bell up 0.8%, Amazon down now by 2.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Tell a big text. That's what we are all about. All right. So we have also been hearing from the heads of some of the biggest U.S. banks a lot. They reported earnings. We've gone through that, but they've been out and about at different events. And many have gathered this past week at the Future Investment Initiative, 9th annual conference. It's held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Among those in attendance talking about credit concerns, the U.S. economy, the global economy, AI and investment opportunities in the Middle East. We've seen Citi CEO Jane Fraser there, Ron O'Hanley, Chairman and CEO of State Street, Jamie Dimon, of course, CEO and Chairman of JP Morgan Chase. We've had the CEO of HSBC, and then Steve Schwartzman, co-founder, chairman, and CEO of the Blackstone Group, and a lot more. I've got to say, the list of folks, and we've been on the ground covering them. If you've missed these interviews, check it out on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com. But that list, it's the biggest financial folks in the world, and certainly in the U.S., Tim. And it's a lot of global CEOs. Intel CEO is there. It's a lot of well-known names.
Well, David Solomon, chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs, he was also at the event in Saudi Arabia, though today he was back in the U.S. in Washington, D.C., sat for an interview with Carlyle co-founder and co-chair David Rubenstein, hosted by the Economic Club of Washington. They had a wide-ranging conversation. David Solomon, though, talking about the possible, quote, reckoning that may be coming for the U.S. economy.
I think people are worried about the level of debt and the fact that we've reached a point. And by the way, this is true in the United States, but it's true in every developed economy where kind of fiscal stimulus and an aggressive fiscal play is really just kind of embedded in the way these democratic economies are operating. And it's accelerated meaningfully in the last 5 years. I think the pandemic, played an accelerating role, and it doesn't seem like we have an ability to pull it back. And so we've taken the debt, in the last 15 plus years, kind of since the financial crisis, from 7 trillion to 38 trillion. The path out really isn't a revenue path out. The path out is a growth path.
Yeah, that number will stick with you. In the last 15 years, the U.S. debt from 7 trillion to 38 trillion. That's a big number. Of course, that was David Solomon, chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs, with Carlyle co-founder and co-chair David Rubenstein. To watch more of that interview, catch the David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations. That will be on November 5th at 9 p.m. New York on Bloomberg TV. All right, so David Solomon also says he sees a low chance of a recession in the near term, and he says the path out, as we just heard, is a growth path. Investors, I think it's safe to say, Tim, that they're not looking at things like there could be any possible recession on the horizon, at least not for a while.
Yeah, even as Wall Street pumped the brakes on the stock rally today, Meta Platforms sank amid plans to take on debt to fund its AI push. That's the reason why it's lower, Carol. It's not that one-time charge. You called it yesterday as those numbers were coming out. You're like, that's what investors are concerned about.
It's been kind of wild, right, to see this trade. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of where we are. It's been a very busy week and full week again. Joining us is Bloomberg News senior editor, Equities Americas, Eric Weiner. He's right here in our studio. It has been a lot. Again, we've seen this story before. I do think it's interesting, and I always think about the news flow, Eric, and what we are focusing on versus what we should focus on. So let's focus first on what we are focusing on, is that the big tech trade. Walk us through what we are seeing in today's trade and how much that is impacting the overall major market averages.
It is the overall major market averages. If you look at the actual performance of the market, actually, today is a reversal of yesterday. More stocks are up. There's about 335 last time I checked stocks up. And yesterday it was the opposite. So the S&P equal weight index was way outperforming. It is way outperforming the S&P 500 normal index today. Yesterday it was the opposite of that. And really what you're seeing is overnight, Meta really getting housed, and Microsoft to a lesser degree. And it is that fear. If you look at what Meta is, the stock isn't actually all that heavily valued relative to other huge tech companies. It's among the lower end of the Mag 7. But what it does is it carries a tremendous amount of spending on AI. And that's kind of where people are getting concerned. When we talk to traders, it's when is this stuff going to start paying off? When are we going to see it? And then you see them rushing out with a very large debt deal, and suddenly it becomes, wow, they're going to fund this with debt. And people start getting concerned about throwing good money after bad.
Debt investors, right?
Yes.
That's essentially moving some of it that way.
Well,
what is the right read on that?
Well, so normally what they had been doing was taking it out of their capital, their capital funds. So they had the money. The argument was they have the money. They don't need to really worry all that much. And then suddenly you see this massive bond offering coming out, and you say, well, wait a second, they don't have the money on their books. And so they're going to be paying interest rates. And yesterday, Jay Powell was a little less, doing a little bit less of the confirmation on the next rate cut, and also sort of sprinkling a little fear of inflation in there. So we don't really know what the path of rates is going to be. And if you take out you do a big bond offering now, that rate expense, that interest expense is going to be on your books.
Eric, before we let you go, 30 seconds on trade, because we're going to be speaking with Caroline Freund in just a second. She's Dean of the UC San Diego School of Global Policy and Strategy. We're going to read her full intro in just a second, but we're talking U.S. and China. We're talking trade. 1 year truce. Why are you laughing?
Because we get this all the time.
Exactly.
I'm waiting.
I didn't even ask a question, and you just started smiling.
19 or 20 days ago, we were arguing whether Trump deserved the Nobel Peace Prize for peace in Gaza. Is anybody saying that there's peace in Gaza? And things change.
I want to see dried ink on a deal.
Exactly. And I want to see the details. And we don't do details, and we don't really do, as you put it, the dried ink. So yeah, we're going to have a agreement of some sort that Trump can talk about, but what is actually the devil in the details, we don't know.
Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah, exactly. Tick, tick, tick. Maybe you have to just wait for another year. I don't know. Eric, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bloomberg News senior editor, Equities America's Eric Weiner here in studio. So let's get to that U.S.-China meeting earlier today in South Korea between President Trump and President Xi. Deal, no deal? How about that 1 year truce? That's what they're calling it. The two did meet on the sidelines of the APEC summit. U.S. cutting the fentanyl tariff, extending the existing truce and reciprocal tariffs. China resuming soybean sales and rare earth flows. But maybe just a stabilization of relationships? Nothing more dramatic here, Tim?
I don't know. Let's ask Caroline Freund. She's Dean of the UC San Diego School of Global Policy and Strategy. She's former senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. She's global director of trade, investment, and competitiveness, formerly at the World Bank, and earlier did time at the Fed and the IMF. She's out there in beautiful La Jolla, California. So the news today, the one year truce, where does that bring us in the context of the relationship in the between the U.S. and China from a trading perspective before President Trump took office for the second time? Is it back to what it was then, or is there still tension from when from his policies early on?
Look, we have the world's top producer and the world's top consumer meeting, and they both have market power in their own way, and they need each other. And that's what we saw. It was effectively a game of chicken. Trump started it, and Xi stayed in the battle, and both just put on the brakes. I think we're close to pre-Liberation Day tariffs, not necessarily close to where Trump came in. There are a few tweaks because we still have some of the fentanyl tariffs. U.S. firms are still facing this licensing regime on magnets. So there's still some things that are in place, but we're pretty close to the pre-Liberation Day tariffs.
Caroline, what is more significant, what they did talk about or what they didn't talk about, meaning Taiwan, TikTok, NVIDIA's high-tech chips, those Blackwell chips, China buying oil perhaps from Russia? Like, there's some really important issues out there that felt like they were missing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that going forward. There's going to be ambiguity on all of those difficult issues. But I also think there's market discipline on the worst case scenario of an escalating trade war. So they both realized how much they need each other. The U.S. market is just impossible to replace. We account for 15% of total global imports. There just is no one else who's gonna take that. China accounts for the same 15% of global exports of goods. We can't completely replace China. So the countries have settled the deals that are or in the areas that really matter for them right now for their economies, but we're gonna see a lot of ambiguity on those much more complex issues.
So were we played? Were citizens of both countries played? Were investors played? Did we kind of start at point A and go through the whole alphabet and then come back to point A?
Yes. I think Trump has tried the kind of bullying technique, and it's worked with everyone else. Early on, it looked like EU would also have. They're just too dependent on the U.S. for security, and that's very important right now, so they didn't. China is equivalent to the US, and China said, no, we're not going to be bullied. We also have things you absolutely need. And now there's kind of a truce. And I think we'll see this muddling along with market discipline on both sides. It'll hurt the US too much to really do a lot more on China. It'll hurt China too much to do a lot more on the US. But in this period of truce, the most important thing is that we work with our allies to develop secure supply chains so we are not dependent on China for rare earths in the way we are now.
So that those allies, including Australia, Canada, where else?
Yeah, exactly. So the agreement with Australia is fantastic, and we should be looking for more agreements like that. Latin America has a lot of rare earths that could be explored that we're part of the Western Hemisphere.
But we have a complicated relationship with some Latin American countries currently.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so the strategy, we can't take on everyone at once. And China really is the biggest competitor, the biggest strategic threat to the US. And we should be working to have agreements with countries where we can both pull them out of the China sphere and where they have things we might need.
You couldn't possibly be thinking about the U.S. shooting on Venezuelan ships, could
Thinking
you?
about that, I'm thinking about I'm absolutely thinking about that.
It's funny, not funny, right?
But I'm also thinking about Argentina.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
complicated in a different way.
Well, Caroline, and I do think about the U.S.'s position in the world at large. Like we